Well, the Seahawks unveiled their top 50 of all time a couple of months ago, and Dave and I have been talking to different players from that list, and it's a pleasure to bring this guy in. We used to see him around the building. He was part of a show here on the weekends, the Outdoor Line.
Yeah.
Be roaming the halls, and now he's elsewhere. But he's with us on the Emerald Queen Casino Sportsbook Hotline. He is Robbie Tobeck. Robbie, how are you, man?
I'm doing great. How are you guys doing?
We're doing
good.
We're doing great. You'll be happy to know that Dave Wyman had you pegged for being about a decade younger than you are. He just said, I thought that he looked so young, and he was having a debate with our producer Matt about the difference in age.
I called him numbnuts because I was like, how old do you think this guy is? But then I forgot, Robbie, that you played for all of those years in Atlanta. So
yeah. It's time flies. I wish I was a decade young. To be that young again and know what I know now, there's no telling what I could do. Yeah.
Well, what I've noticed, Robbie, is that right now, so I'm over 60, and I'm like, man, I'd kill to be 50 again. When I'm 70. I'm going to be going, man, I'd kill to be 60 again.
I was in my prime at 60.
Yeah, you just got to appreciate it all.
Yeah, you're talking to this young whippersnapper, Robbie Tobeck now. Hey, Robbie, just first of all, what's that like for you to be named one of the 50 greatest to ever put on a Seahawks uniform? What is that? When you heard that news, what was your reaction?
Well, I mean, it's such an honor to be voted by the fans, and then also to have local media guys and some, personnel guys and, whoever it was that made that decision to be thought of in that vein. It's just quite an honor. Chuck Arnold gave me a call. I was actually out of town on vacation, and then I get a call from the Seahawks. I'm like, what the heck's going on here? And, it's Chuck Arnold. And I just got cold chills, got excited. It was really quite an honor and very humbling to be considered to have been of that caliber. Well,
and Robbie, we talked to Lofa, and he couldn't say better things about you, by the way, but also he was a little bummed that Locklear didn't make it because you guys did, and you guys had just an amazing offensive line and connection. As far as you at center, you got Hutch and Chris Gray at guard, you got Walt and Locklear on the other side. Did you guys realize how good you were, or what was the feeling? You had to have felt pretty dominant at that point.
Well, you know how it is, Dave. You get into a season and you start putting wins together, and you play together for a number of years, and you just don't think of it like, I was always like, next game, here's what I got to do next, all those types of things. You don't have time to really sit back and consider like, hey, we're pretty darn good. You just kind of move on and move to the next thing, because if you sit back and you rest on your laurels, you get your tail kicked.
Yeah.
And we never did that. We just always kind of kept, okay, that was a great game, but we got the Niners this week, and we got to get ready for, Bryant Young. And it's all those types of things. And you just don't have time to sit back and think of yourself when you're going through it. You're going through it. You're trying to earn that respect. And I think that's one of the things, that was great about us, is that we got to play together for a number of years. Locklear was kind of at the end there. For some of us, the year when we went to the Super Bowl, he stepped in and did a great job. But four of the five of us, we played together 4 or 5 years, and we saw a lot, and we did a lot together.
How big is that, to have that continuity, to have that? I always heard that for years, and anybody I talked to that played in the league, that played O-line, they're like, man, you work in concert together, and you just know what that guy to your left or your right is going to do, and you don't even have to verbalize it. And it feels like today, and maybe it's just out of necessity, but there's a lot more turnover. There's a lot, whether a guy's coming in, this guy's in for a series, this guy's in for a series. The idea of having those 5 guys, or even 4 of the 5 together year after year, almost seems antiquated. And again, maybe it's just a lack of talent, or it's the way the game's played. But how big is that, in your opinion?
Oh, I think it's huge, because by the end of it all, Dave will tell you that, defensive guys, not as smart as us offensive guys. But,
you think I'll tell them
that? They're still smart enough to pick up on our calls and all those different types of things. And we had progressed to the point where, as a center, I'm responsible to make the call, but I would just call a number. And so you had no idea based on a D lineman would have no idea based on our call if it's a run or a pass or anything like that. And you know, which way the center's going a lot of times, you know, guys will base stuff they do off of that and things. And, you know, it's easy. If I say Louis or if I say Roger, you know, oh, he's going left, he's going right. But if I just say number 50, you don't know what I'm doing. And so we were to that point where we gave nothing away. We didn't give up anything cheap. And I think that really helped us, you know, talking to guys from other teams in later years. And they were like, man, we just never could get a beat on you guys. And that's a direct result of us playing together so long and being, you know, being in that same meeting room on the field, practicing all those reps we did together. That's a benefit of that right there.
Yeah, Robbie, I was always envious of the offensive linemen because they were always just the tightest group. It seemed like. You guys still keep in touch? You still keep in touch with all those guys?
Yeah, we do. You know, talked to Hutch a couple weeks ago, texted with Walt last week. I'm a little salty with Walt right now because he made a quick trip into Tampa and didn't hit me up, but I know he had a full schedule, but I'm gonna let him off the hook. But but yeah, we still do. We still get together. We still, you know, talk to Chris Gray. You know, you guys, if you guys get a chance to talk to Chris Gray, he said he got a call from the Seahawks. He told me the other day, and he thought that it was Hutch and I playing a joke on him. I said, Chris, man, I love you too much for that. You know, I like to joke around, but I wouldn't do something like that. But anyway, yeah. So point is, answer your question. Yeah, we still stay in touch, and I love those guys. And we get together, we just fall right back into the same everything, the same jokes, the same stories. We never get tired of telling them, and you know, we just have lots of fun together.
Hey, as far as O-line these days, is there a dramatic difference in what they're asking O-linemen to do? It just feels like the idea of a constant 5 or 4, it just isn't reality for most teams. And I'm wondering if their guys are too specialized, or now we're caught up in the idea of, well, this guy can play a guard and he can play tackle and he can play center, he can play everywhere. So you've got all these guys who are, you know, they're multiple. They can do that. Has it changed from when you were playing to the way they use O-linemen now?
Well, you know, I think when I played, everyone, you know, the coach, they are always looking for a guy. You had to play at least 2 positions. If you were a guard, you know, usually if you weren't the starter, you were a backup. You had to be able to play guard and tackle or guard and center. And if you were a backup tackle, you had to be able to play a little guard. So you always had to kind of do that just based on numbers. But I think free agency and coaching turnover, all those types of things, I think that a lot of that leads to, you know, having guys in and out. You know, I was thinking about the Seahawks earlier today, and, you know, we got, you know, a pretty good foundation of young guys with you know, 2 young tackles, you know, I think we drafted a couple guys. I think they're going to be pretty good. Man, if you could get these guys together and keep them together, they're fairly young, keep them together, keep them, you know, healthy, those types of things. They got a really good shot at being good. But yeah, it's a little different. You look at Philadelphia; they kept a group together for a number of years with the guys they had, Lane Johnson, and those guys, and they're really, really good. And I think, you know, I think if I'm a personnel guy, you know, or running a team, I want to keep my offensive line. I think you got to have a quarterback, and then I think you got to win at the line of scrimmage. And you know, I feel like I can find guys that can run fast and do some things, but you can't find enough guys that can play left tackle in the league. It's just like quarterback. You can't find enough guys that are good enough to play to be starting quarterbacks. You know, so it's a specialized position. It's not one that anybody grows up wanting to. You know, nobody wants to go play O-line when they start playing football. But you know, it is a highly skilled position, and I just think with practice nowadays too, I think that hurts these guys a little bit. Yeah. You know, they don't bang as much as we did. As much as I hated banging all the time in practice and training camp, stuff like that, reps are important, and I think they need a little bit more of that. Maybe not too much, but a little bit more of that in training camp.
Yeah, I think it sounds like McDonald is going to kind of push the edge on that, because he says a number of times, like, we can't tell. He kind of sounds old school, you know? He's like, we can't tell until we start hitting. But Hey, I wanted to ask you, Robbie, we just had a story that we went through about Brandon Scherf and the Seahawks possibly signing him. But, there was this whole Pro Football Focus, rating. And, and Bob asked me, what do I think about it? And I'm like, it's a good question just because, somebody is willing to sit there and, look at the right guard for the Jacksonville Jaguars, in all 16 games. And they're giving now I don't know, what their experience is. And, like I said, I feel like if I don't know the rules and of the, the blocking scheme or whatever, based on where a guy's lines up, I don't really know how to rate a guy like that. How do you look at the Pro Football Focus stuff with particularly offensive line, which I think is the biggest question marks, number one, and then the one position group that the least number of people know about?
Yeah, I think you nailed it. It's the rules. You don't know what you might know, hey, this protection, they're sliding to the left, but you don't know the details of how that's being coached. Yeah. Did the left guard abandon too soon and go to nobody and left the center out? And you say, well, the center got beat on that. Well, no, he was expecting the left guard to leave a hand or be there a little bit, so you don't know the rules. You don't know exactly how that's coached. And it's tough. And I think you're right. There's not enough guys. And, even head coaches and offensive coordinators and stuff, a lot of times they don't even know what's going on with the offensive line because they don't care. They just want to throw the ball around the field. They want to call their plays. They want to do all that stuff, and they just want you just to get it done as an offensive line and stuff. So I think it is tough. I think particularly with offensive line, I think you nail it. You're 1,000%. You got to know the rules and what they're trying to do before you can really judge on, were they successful or not? Were they good on that play?
Right. What about the kids coming out of college these days? Because we had when Tom Cable was here, he would make statements about, look, I can take a D lineman and turn him into an O lineman just as well as I can take an O lineman because they don't teach him at that level. He made it sound like the starting point is the same whether you play defensive line or offensive line, which I had a hard time agreeing with. But I'm curious what you think of the talent that comes out of the college level. Do you think they are doing them a disservice that they're not teaching them the right way, and it is almost like starting over at the NFL level, or is that a bit of an overstatement?
Yeah, I think that I agree with you that is an overstatement to say something like that. But I do think, the college game is such now that, they got away from huddling. Nobody, you look at teams and nobody puts their hand in the ground anymore and comes off the football and stuff like that. So in the NFL, you got to be able to do it. The NFL still likes to run the football. It was great football last year watching the NFL season, all these coaches and teams getting back to running the football and stuff. So that's what I think the NFL game's about. That's what I love to watch. I mean, it's fun to watch them throw the ball around, but in college now, everyone's in a 2-point stance. Everyone's looking to the sideline. The centers aren't snapping the ball to the quarterbacks anymore. It's all shotgun stuff. So it is different, and there is a big learning curve when you get to the league. I mean, your head's swimming. It's bad enough you've jumped to this talent level, and you're trying to learn that. You're trying to learn the plays, and then by the way, they're asking me to do something that I've never done before. And it adds a level of difficulty, and some guys can't adapt, can't adjust. And I think, I think it would be, great for the NFL linemen if colleges started running the football a little bit more and doing some stuff like that. But I don't know if it's going to change anytime soon.
Yeah. It seems like there's not a lot of quarterback under center and, like you said, huddling. And hey, tell us about. I think the center position is really important, and obviously because you touch the ball. But as far as for the Seahawks, I mean, it was Blair Bush. There were some good players, between you and them, but then you came along, and then we had a couple
Unger,
of Max Unger, and then
Justin
Britt. But I mean, it's been a while since they've really had a good, solid center. How important is that?
I think it's very important. I think it's one of those positions that gets overlooked. I think as a center, you have to have some leadership ability. you're the guy that's making the calls. You're the guy that the other guys are going to look to. I mean, I remember it like yesterday, looking down the line and seeing Walt staring at me like, okay, what are you going to call? What are we doing on this play? And because they can't do their job until you've done your job by letting them know on a lot of plays and stuff. So it's important that way. You got to be quick. You got to be in tune with your quarterback. Matt, when I was playing, Matt had to know that I was seeing this guy coming off the corner just like he was, and he had to have the faith that I was going to either get there myself or get one of the guys there and stuff. So there's a lot of communication that takes place. And, I think you have to have a high standard. I've talked to a few centers over the years, and, I had one guy, Dave, you'll appreciate this. He said to me, coach is being tough on me. I don't make more than 1 or 2 mental errors a game. And I told him that, I would be suicidal if I made 1 or 2 mental errors a game, I mean, it's like, what are you talking about, man? It's like, you got to raise your standard a little bit. So I worry sometimes that, the fact is, I think we're not, maybe, we're talking about college earlier. I think we're not coached as hard as we used to be. You look at some of the college guys coming out, there's a little more coddling than there used to be. And some of that's good and some of it's hurts a guy. But I think, that standard with a lot of these college guys coming out and has to be raised. And certainly as a center, you've got to be accountable to those other guys. And I think it takes a certain guy to be able to handle that role. You know what, Robbie? I think you'd like John Benton. They call him JB here. I don't know if you've ever crossed paths with him, but when I was out at OTAs, I heard a lot of, that's not even close. No, wrong. He was coaching him up, and he was a little old school there. So I think you'd fit right in. Yeah, a little Tom Lovat in him, it sounds like, and stuff. So, but no, and it's great. I never minded being coached hard as long as I was coached fair. Yeah. I thought that's one of the things I liked about Coach Holmgren was, I always thought he was fair as a head coach. But if you're an offensive line coach and you're grinding on me, that's fine, because I know your intention is to help me get better. Right. But just be fair. And as long as he's being fair, I think guys will respond to him and guys will play hard for him.
Hey, real quick before we let you go, Robbie, I'm just curious to get your take on Olu Oluwatimi, a guy that they picked up in the 5th round. He won all the awards at the college level, playing for a big-time program like Michigan. He wins the Remington and the Outland Trophy. So he was well regarded as a college player, but then he comes here and there's questions, can he do it at this level? He's not good at pass block. We were talking about some of the metrics associated with his pass blocking and his run blocking. Mm-hmm. What do you see? Is he a guy that you think he could be the future, or no, he's too small, he's not the right fit? What's your take on him? If memory serves, he's been banged around a little bit and had a couple of injury deals that he's had to deal with. I look at him and I watch him play, and I think he's got ability, and he's got the ability to get it done and be a player. I say if I'm coaching him, I'm wanting him to move his body weight around a little bit. I thought he was a little too big. I think he could play probably a little thinner, if that makes sense. If he's going to play the center position, you don't have to be 315, 320, whatever that is, to play that position. I just thought he looked a little big, last couple of games I've seen him play. But, he's got some ability. I mean, he's a strong kid. He can move some people around. I just, sometimes it takes time, and you got to get in the right system. You got to get with the right coach. You got to figure it out a little bit, and hopefully this year's the year where he can figure some things out and be a great player for us. Robbie, it's great to talk to you, man. Congratulations on being named one of the 50 greatest to ever put on a Seahawks uniform. That's a huge honor, and it's well deserved. So congrats on that, and thanks so much for taking time with us, man. Well, I appreciate you guys having me on, and thank you very much, and go Hawks.
You're the best, Robbie. Thanks, man.
Thank you.